your cardiac sense should be, but also the time, they should be shorter.
Remember, you are not just a woman, you are crowned with purpose. Crowned with purpose.
This is Church of Uganda Family TV. Enriching lives. Regulated by the Uganda Communications Commission. Issues at hand.
Good morning once again. This is Issues at Hand. Of course, we are still continuing with our show, Arise a Family. And now we get into the discussion of a very, very pertinent issue. As we know that this is a month that is dedicated to raise awareness, especially on trafficking in persons. We have very many of our friends, of our brothers, of our sisters, and parents who have been trafficked. Who knows? As we speak, you who is listening to us, you're where you are because as a result of trafficking. Now, today we are looking at the role of the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions and what their role is in the fight against trafficking in persons. With us is Jacquelyn, the Public Relations Officer, Office of the Public Prosecutions. It's a pleasure having you, Jacquelyn, this morning.
Thank you very much, Adrian. It's a pleasure for me to be here. Good morning, viewers.
Well, how is the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions?
Well, the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions is doing well.
Okay.
Yes. And we are happy to be here with viewers this morning and with Family TV.
We are delighted to have you, especially discussing this very pertinent topic that is at the heart of very many Ugandans out there. But to start with, how can you break down trafficking? Human trafficking or trafficking in persons for us?
Adrian and viewers, human trafficking is a criminal offense. And the best way that I can define it is that it is the process through which individuals are recruited, moved, placed, and maintained in an exploitative situation for gain. Okay. It could be economic gain. It could be, for instance, sexual exploitation, labor exploitation, human sacrifice, debt bondage, any kind of exploitation. When we go deep into what is entailed in the offense of human trafficking, we have to establish three major elements. And the first element is an act. There must be an act, for instance, the recruitment of a person, the movement of a person, or the transportation of a person from one place to another, the confinement of a person, or the placement of a person somewhere in a location. Then we have the means through which that act was committed. It could be through deception. It could be through fraud. It could be through coercion. It could be through the abuse of the vulnerability of a person. For instance, the age of the person. Maybe the person is too young. So they abuse that vulnerability. Or maybe the person is too old, of advanced age. And so that vulnerability is abused. And then the third one is exploitation. That the person was exploited, probably sexually, labor-wise. They were made to do work by force, so exploitation, or they were sacrificed. Yes, so that is what constitutes the offense of human trafficking.
Okay. Now, before we get into your intervention as the OPDD, ODPP, yes. we really need to also understand the mandate and jurisdiction of ODPP, Office of the Director of Public Prosecution.
All right. Thank you, Adrian. So the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions is an office that is established by the Constitution of the Republic of Uganda, and specifically by Article 120. And it is established to do two major things. The first one is to direct the police to investigate information, any information of a criminal nature, and report to the Director of Public Prosecutions expeditiously. We are also mandated to prosecute criminal cases in all courts in Uganda with jurisdiction apart from the court-martial. So we are involved in all manner of criminal cases in various courts, in the courts of judicature in the country. We only don't prosecute cases in the court-martial. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And then should a case be instituted privately, because the law also permits private prosecutions. Should a case be instituted privately, we can, for one reason or another, take over that case from court and either continue prosecuting it, or we discontinue prosecutions also for one reason or another. And lastly, we are also mandated to terminate criminal proceedings in courts of law. But this is only the preserve of the Director of Public Prosecutions. So no officer, even in the office of the DPP, can terminate criminal proceedings. It has to be the DPP herself. And she usually does this through two documents. In the magistrate's court, it's a withdrawal form. So we have to tender in a withdrawal form signed by her. And if it's in the High Court, it's what we call a nolle prosequi, signed by her. So that is what the office of the DPP does in Uganda.
Okay. Now, having looked at what the office of the DPP does, it's also important to look at your mandate in relation to now trafficking in persons.
Okay. So in relation to trafficking in persons, well, it's not going to be very far from the major mandate.
Okay.
Yes. So in relation to trafficking in persons, we direct the police to investigate cases of trafficking in persons. And we came up with an effective means of doing this, which is prosecution-guided investigations. And through this, we get involved in the trafficking cases at the earliest opportunity. And the reason for this is to ensure that we have effective investigations that will most likely lead to successful prosecutions in court, but also to ensure that investigations are carried out expeditiously. So we guide the police on what type of evidence to collect, so that now they're not just going on a fishing expedition. Yes. And then after the investigations are concluded, we then now come in to prosecute the cases in courts of law. So when we decide that a case has sufficient evidence to be prosecuted in the courts of law, then we have these cases prosecuted with a victim-centered approach and a trauma-informed approach. And I mean that we have the victims at the center of the process. We really have the victims in mind as we are doing our work.
Okay.
Now, how do we prosecute these cases?
Yes.
We prosecute them in a number of ways. But you know, the word prosecution is a big word. You cannot assume that everyone knows what prosecution is. So I'll explain that. So what I mean by prosecution is that we, first of all, sanction these cases. We will sanction a charge sheet which has the offense, meaning that so and so, let's say X, has trafficked Y on such and such a date, and the circumstances under which the person was trafficked. And so that is what we have to prove in court. And we prove this by calling witnesses. The witnesses include usually the victim of crime, those who saw or heard something about the trafficking. Then we usually also have police witnesses, the investigators. We also have sometimes forensic witnesses, if there's been a forensic analysis of evidence. So we call those witnesses to court, and then we lead them in court by asking them questions about what happened to establish that the offense was committed. So we plead the case of the victim in the courts of law. We present the evidence to the magistrates and to the judges, and then the magistrates and the judges, after the accused person has defended himself or herself, then they make a decision as to whether the accused person is innocent or guilty. That's why they call us the pleaders
Yes.
of the victims. And we act on behalf of the government, the state. The state represents the victims of crime, and the victims don't pay us to do this. It's the state that pays us to do this.
Okay.
So that is what prosecution is. Now, we also ensure that victims of trafficking in persons are protected, that they are protected during the process of prosecution. So that is before, during, and also sometimes after trial. We ensure their protection. And I will give protection before, during, and after trial, maybe through placing them in shelters, in protected homes.
Okay.
Then also,
Not safe homes.
if you want safe, where they are safe.
Yes.
Then we also have protection in court. So we make necessary applications for their protection. For instance, we can request the court to have what we call audiovisual proceedings, where the victim does not appear physically in court, but on camera. So the victim testifies on camera. We can also request the court to have members of the public not appear inside the court as the victim is testifying, including the media. That is a means of protection. Then we also have other means of protection, like reduction of statements, because we are mandated to disclose evidence to the accused person. We don't do trial. The trials by ambush are not done in this day and age. So where we see that victims need to be protected, we can request the court through applications to redact evidence. So we disclose with reductions. For instance, we can redact the name of the victim. We can redact the address of the victim, so that the victim is not easily located by the accused person and his associates. And then we can also do camouflage, use wigs, sunglasses, all sorts of things to disguise the appearance of the victim, so that the victim is not easily identified. And then there's also voice. We can disrupt the voice, so that the voice is not easily detected by the accused person. Now, in prosecution, we have what we call plea bargaining. Now, plea bargaining is a process where the state agrees with an accused person who knows he or she is guilty and is willing to plead guilty. So we can enter a negotiation, a bargain with that accused person for a lesser sentence or a reduced charge. And this is because the accused person admits at an early stage that they have committed the offense, and they do not take us through the whole prosecution process or trial process. Prosecutions that entail full trials come with challenges. Challenges of victims having to tell their stories. In that process, they can be re-traumatized because they have to narrate the horrendous ordeals that they have gone through. So through that process, they end up being re-traumatized. Then also, a lot of time goes into full trials, and they are also expensive. And also, the more full trials you have, the less cases will be heard, because every case has a cost. So where you can have a plea bargain, it is beneficial in that respect, because you avoid re-traumatization, you avoid delays in justice, then you are able to save money to handle other cases where accused persons are not readily pleading guilty. So we also handle prosecutions through plea bargains. It's one of the means through which these cases are fast-tracked.
Okay.
Yes.
Now, looking at this entire process, are there any challenges you encounter as the ODPP, especially in prosecuting these cases?
Yes. We have a number of challenges. The cases are many. The cases are many, and they are not the only cases in the criminal justice system. So the criminal justice system is also accommodating other types of cases, rapes, defilements, murders, robberies, and so a number of cases, trafficking cases, are not heard as quickly as you'd expect them to be heard, or as you'd want them to be heard. And we have a challenge with cases which take a bit of time to be prosecuted and heard, because you'll find that in some of the cases, the victims end up being compromised by the accused persons and their associates. Others end up being intimidated, and by the time now the case comes up for hearing, they cannot testify. Then we also have those ones who lose interest in the cases because of time lapse. The time the case comes up for hearing, the victim tells you, I'm no longer interested in the case. That case, it happened a long time ago. I've given up on it. Then we also have the challenge of transnational human trafficking cases. These are cases that go across the border, across Uganda. So they are not usually very easy to investigate, because you have evidence not just in Uganda, but also abroad. And there are processes that have to be followed. Those processes are bureaucratic, they can be lengthy, they can be expensive. So you find that those investigations tend to even take long to be completed. So those kinds of cases tend to drag. Then we also have a challenge with cases where we have suspects abroad. Suspects abroad, meaning that they have to be brought, extradited to Uganda. That is also quite a process. It can take time. The processes also can be a little bit bureaucratic. And then we tend to require agreements between Uganda and those countries. And at the moment, we don't have as many bilateral and multilateral agreements. So you'll find that where a case involves a country without a bilateral agreement, then there you're just going to depend on goodwill. You just request and hope that the country will oblige.
So if it's not in their will, then
yes, then you'll find that the case will not progress. Yes. And then we also have a problem of limited resources to handle all the cases that we have, and then limited resources to ensure the protection of all victims of trafficking in persons. We also have a challenge of victims that fail to cooperate with us, or that do not cooperate with us. And many times, well, like I've talked about intimidation, there are victims who are intimidated and they completely fear to cooperate. But then we also have the problem of these ones who are compromised. They are given money and they become comfortable with the money, and they are no longer interested in the process, in the justice process. And this is a big challenge, because now that means that that perpetrator of the trafficking will most likely go scot-free, because for one to be convicted of an offense of trafficking in persons, the state, us, the office of the DPP, has to prove the case beyond reasonable doubt. We have to give evidence to the court which is sufficient for that conviction. And the evidence is with the witnesses, is with the victims of crime. So now when the victims and the witnesses do not come and testify because they've been compromised, that means we cannot prove the case. That means most likely that accused person will be acquitted, or the case will be dismissed for want of prosecution, and then we end up losing. And the challenge is that, remember, this person is most likely a trafficker. So once the case is lost, once the person is acquitted or the case is dismissed, the person goes out and is likely to continue trafficking others.
Yeah.
That is a very big challenge. Yes.
Now, talking about all these challenges, and they're quite big challenges that some you have no control over. But are there measures in place as the ODPP to see that at least for some of the challenges that are within your means can be handled?
Yes. Definitely we have measures in place to mitigate these challenges and to ensure that trafficking in persons cases are investigated and prosecuted effectively, or even more effectively. So we are trying as much as possible to ensure that the cases are fast-tracked in the criminal justice system through the plea bargaining, but also through sessions, case sessions. So we're trying as much as possible to ensure that we have these cases prosecuted and heard in sessions. So sessions that can accommodate a number of cases, let's say 20 cases, 30 cases, and this can be heard in, let's say, 1 month. Okay. Yes. So we are trying to ensure that we have resources for sessions. Then we are also ensuring that we sensitize the public about trafficking in persons and how best they can ensure that the offense is prevented and combated. We are encouraging reporting of cases in the community. We are encouraging cooperation with law enforcement agencies, with the police, with the Office of the DPP, and the courts. So we are encouraging members of the public to report. And after they have reported, to cooperate with the police in the investigation of the cases, provide the evidence. We're encouraging them to cooperate with the Office of the DPP, come and testify in court, so that we have convictions where we deserve convictions. Yes. Then we are also ensuring that victims of crime, of the crime of trafficking in persons, are adequately protected. Okay. So we, in this regard, we coordinate with other institutions that offer protection to victims of trafficking in persons, mostly CSOs, CSOs, CBOs. So we have relationships with them. Okay. We actually have referral guidelines and a book that has the different institutions that you can call in case of need of these services. We also are endeavoring to ensure that victims of trafficking in persons have essentials. They have their essential needs covered. Shelter, food, medical requirements. Yes, I've talked about accommodation, psychosocial support, also through some of these CSOs. Okay. We are also ensuring that we coordinate, collaborate, and have partnerships with relevant institutions that are anti-trafficking institutions. For instance, we have relationships with the Human Trafficking Institute, CIVIPOL, also government institutions like Ministry of Internal Affairs, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Ministry of Gender, Labor, and Social Development. So we are working together, and we have what we call COPTIP. This is the Coordination Office for the Prevention of Trafficking in Persons. So we are not just working as the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions. We are working together with other anti-trafficking agencies, institutions, to ensure that together we fight trafficking in persons.
Okay. Well, we are taking a short commercial break, and when we return, we now want to look at the legal framework, especially in Uganda, and where is the protection so that you do not sit there and cry. And secondly, if you have a case, where do you report it? And do you directly go to the ODPP, or there is a protocol you're supposed to follow? So we are coming back shortly. Stick with us.
Issues at hand. Issues at hand.
Welcome back from that commercial break. Now we are back. We are looking at the role of the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions, and we want to see how they intervene and how what their efforts are, especially in eliminating, if that's the right word, eliminating trafficking in persons. Remember, this month this is a month of awareness, and so we create awareness because very many of our friends are trafficked. Sometimes we think trafficking is only taking people out of the country, but even other people are trafficked from villages out there and taken to some other places here in the same country. Now that is how serious this is. Now, Jacquelyn, before the break, you took us through a number of things that you do, and then the big question is, when I have a case to report, because you talked about the collaboration you have with the different the institutions that work towards the same cause. When I have a case of maybe trafficking, I was trafficked, or my sister was trafficked, or I have someone who traffics people, and as a whistleblower, I want to report. Where do I go? Okay,
so usually what happens is when you have a case, or when you've been involved in a case of trafficking in persons, you as a victim can report if you're available to report. So the victim can report, but not just the victim. Even a witness, someone who has witnessed that a victim has been trafficked, can report, because the victim may not be in position to report.
Yes.
So the witness of the trafficking can report, and they should report to the police, the nearest police station. The police station in whose jurisdiction that incident has occurred. The moment you report, or the person reports to the police, the police will open up a case file for that case, and they'll begin to investigate it. And the investigation is through obtaining statements from the victim and the witnesses of the offense. So they will collect those statements, and they'll do other investigations, for instance, medical examinations. In case they have a victim of a sexual assault, they will have to do a medical examination of that victim. And any other forensic investigation that is necessary. So they will compile a file with the evidence. Once they have compiled the file, that file will be submitted to the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions. Now, when I spoke about prosecution-guided investigations, the moment the case is reported to the police, the police will involve us. And then we shall come into that case, and then we shall guide the police on what kind of evidence to obtain. So that as they are investigating, they are getting the evidence which we find relevant to that case. So after the file is compiled, they present the file to the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions. And it's usually to our officer in that jurisdiction, because we have a number of offices all over the country. They are called resident state attorney offices or resident state prosecutor offices. Now, the police will submit the file to the resident state attorney, who is in charge of the resident state attorney office. So the resident state attorney will peruse that file or read through that file and determine whether the evidence is sufficient to take that case to court. Now, if the resident state attorney or any officer in that office looks at the file and finds that the evidence is sufficient to take the case to court, they will sanction the charge sheet and the case will go to court. If they find that the evidence is not sufficient, they may send the file back to the police to do further investigations and explain which ones need to be carried out. If the evidence is insufficient and there is no other evidence that they can see they can get, they will close the file, and usually the case ends there.
Before it gets to court?
Yes, there are cases that are closed without reaching court because there is not enough evidence. Yes. So sometimes we get cases of fabricated evidence or evidence which is just not sufficient to warrant a prosecution. Maybe a person is alleged to have committed an offense, but the evidence is indicating that it may not be that person, it may be another person. Yeah, so then we would close that file.
Okay.
But it can be reopened if we get other evidence.
So meaning a person cannot specifically go to the office of the state attorney, the resident attorney, to report a case. It should be through the police. So
it should be through the police. However, should anyone have trouble reporting a case, maybe they go to the police and report and the police are not giving them attention, they don't open up a file, they can come and complain to the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions. Because remember, like I said in our mandate is to direct the police to investigate. So should someone come with a complaint to the Office of the DPP about a human trafficking case, we can direct the police to open up a file and investigate it. Yes. So we also have in the Office of the DPP what we call the complaints mechanism. And we entertain complaints from members of the public regarding criminal cases. So these complaints should relate to conduct by the police in respect to investigation of these cases, and also conduct by our staff. So should a member of the public have a complaint with the manner in which their case is being investigated, they can report to the resident state attorney at the resident state attorney's office or the resident state prosecutor. If they don't get the necessary attention, then they escalate the complaint to the regional office. So we have 19 regional offices in Uganda. So for instance, we have Kampala region. The regional office is at the at Workers' House, 7th floor. Under that Kampala region, we have offices in Buganda Road, Makindi, City Hall. So all these offices fall under Kampala region. So if there is a problem at City Hall with your case, you report to the regional officer at Kampala region. Now, if you don't get help at Kampala region, or if the matter is handled in a biased way, then now you can escalate it to the DPP at the head office. In writing, write to the DPP, the matter will be handled by the Complaints Management Office at the head office, and that is the last office that you can appeal to. When the DPP has decided at that level, that is the end of the matter.
Okay.
Yes.
Now, there is something that we find solace in, especially when we know about the protection in the law. So you know that when this happens to me, at least I know there is a backup, the legal backup. Now, do you have any legal framework in Uganda, especially that highlights the offenses that are related to trafficking in persons?
Yes, we do. And that is the law that we use to charge suspects of trafficking in persons. So we have the Prevention of Trafficking in Persons Act, which was enacted in 2009. It's the major law that governs trafficking in persons. And it's the one that contains all the offenses relating to trafficking in persons. So for instance, we have what we call aggravated trafficking in children, aggravated trafficking in persons. We have trafficking in persons. So when we talk about aggravated, that's like the highest. Trafficking of children is aggravated. And it stipulates the penalties for these offenses. So for instance, for aggravated trafficking in children and trafficking in persons, it's death. Death is the maximum penalty. Then we have trafficking in persons. We have attempted trafficking in persons, conspiracy to traffic persons. So there are various offenses spelled out in this act with penalties. And the act also provides for protection measures, protection of victims of trafficking in persons. We have protection in terms of immunity from being charged, because you know, in this offense of trafficking in persons, people traffic people and then they make them commit offenses. They make them do drugs. They can make them enter countries illegally. So this law that I'm talking about, it provides for immunity of victims of trafficking in persons from being charged or prosecuted for those offenses that arise from their being trafficked. It provides for confidentiality, especially for children and sexual exploitation related trafficking in persons. So it provides for confidentiality of that information that relates to them. It provides for provision of basic needs, essential needs, shelter, psychosocial support, food, for those victims of trafficking in persons. It also provides for restitution, compensation, awards. So it's not just that you will end up with imprisonment for the offender. We can also pray as the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions for the victims to be restituted, to be given what they have lost or what they spent as a result of that human trafficking. Compensation in respect of emotional harm, psychosocial harm, physical harm that resulted from the human trafficking. Yes.
So do you feel as the ODPP that there should be as well an amendment in some of these laws, because you realize things keep on changing, and the way people do things also change. Of late, there is another unique way of trafficking people, where people go to the villages and tell them, we have employment in Kampala, you're going to be a what manager, and then they are brought into here to do totally different things. Now, this is no longer direct. But it all remains trafficking. So, do you feel there is need for maybe an amendment in some of these laws?
Yes, but I have not finished giving all the laws.
Okay.
Let me give all the laws, and then I'll come to that.
Exactly.
So, in line with the Prevention of Trafficking in Persons Act, we also have the Prevention of Trafficking regulations.
Okay.
Which support the Act. We have the National Action Plan for Prevention of Trafficking in Persons, which spells out the 4 Ps, what we call the 4 Ps. It focuses on prevention of trafficking in persons. It focuses on protection of the victims of trafficking in persons. It focuses on prosecution of suspects of trafficking in persons, and then partnerships. So the 4 Ps are the ones that govern how we operate in fighting trafficking in persons. Then we also have the National Referral Guidelines for management of victims of trafficking in persons. So this one provides for referral pathways, referring victims for psychosocial support and other things, and ensures the protection of victims of trafficking in persons. And then we have also come up with our own guidelines. We have prosecution guidelines for trafficking in persons cases that guide the prosecutors on how to manage, to direct investigations and prosecute these cases, because you realize that it's important for the people who are handling the cases to know how to handle them effectively. So we decided to come up with guidelines to guide the prosecutors on how to guide investigations and prosecute the cases. And then we also came up with, together with other institutions, we came up with standard operating procedures for investigating and prosecuting cases of trafficking in persons. Now, these ones also guide all officers involved in managing trafficking in persons cases on what to do from the time the case is reported to the decision of the court, to the sentence. So there's guidance for everyone involved in the process in those standard operating procedures, and it comes together with a checklist. So that is what is guiding the whole process of combating trafficking in persons. Yes, actually at this point in time we're considering pushing for an amendment in respect to certain areas, because you know that crime evolves with time.
Exactly.
So at the time that a law is enacted, the situation is different, but over time it changes. So we find that there is need to actually have the laws amended. So we are working on ensuring that the law is amended in certain areas. Yes.
Okay. So as we draw closer to the end of this discussion, how can the public then support, especially in your efforts together with other institutions to combat trafficking in persons?
Thank you, Adrian. So I would appeal to members of the public, first and foremost, when you are faced with a challenge of human trafficking or trafficking in persons, as a victim, report. Because if you don't report, that case cannot enter the criminal justice system. It remains with you, it remains in the community, and the suspects or the people involved in that trafficking, they remain free to continue trafficking others. So it becomes a risk, not just to you, but also to others. So please report cases of trafficking in persons to the police. Then please cooperate with the police once you have reported these cases. Provide the necessary evidence. And this is not just to victims of crime, it's also to witnesses. Do not fear to go to police and make statements when you have information that relates to an offense of trafficking in persons. And then when it comes to us, when we summon you as a witness, come and testify in court.
People fear witnessing.
Yes. So some people receive the summonses and they don't respond. So please come and testify in these cases, because you know that if you don't come and testify, most likely these accused persons are going to be acquitted. So these cases are dependent on you. They are dependent on you. You have a very big role to play in these cases. So come and testify, because once you testify, then we shall be able to have a proper verdict, a verdict of justice. And we are here to ensure that justice prevails in all these cases.
Okay. So this year's theme is human trafficking is organized crime, and because this is a month of raising awareness, what is your call to action as the ODPP?
It's that we want cooperation.
Okay.
We want cooperation from members of the public. And also, we urge the public to feel free to approach our office, especially when they have complaints in regard to human trafficking cases. Do not sit back with your complaint. Do not sit back and think that the justice system has failed. You can actually report to our office and we shall do something about it. We are able to influence the police, and we are also able to influence what happens in court in these cases. So work with us so that we achieve criminal justice in this nation.
Thank you so much, Jacquelyn. Any parting shots before we close?
The Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions is for you, members of the public.
So thank you so much, Jacquelyn, and thank you so much to our viewer who started with us. We've come to the end of today's Issues at Hand. Edwin Austin Mukalazi is my name. Please be vigilant. When you realize that the channels through which someone is employing you are not clear, or maybe when we talk about labor externalization, because this is where the biggest problems are now, when you realize that the channels are not the clear channels of immigration that you know, please desist and be a whistleblower. That is the only way we can eliminate this growing vice out of our country. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching us from where we started from at 6:30 up to now. We've come to the end of this show. I've worked with Emma, I've worked with Muhumuza, Patience, and Jackie, and Esther. From the entire team, we wish you a blessed day.
Issues at Hand. This is Church of Uganda Family TV.